The galaxy had known war for as long as history was recorded, but few conflicts had carried the weight of the one now burning across the stars. The Zir Dominion, a civilization built upon conquest, had swept through entire sectors. Their fleets blotted out suns, their soldiers left nothing behind but silence. Many worlds had fallen, many species had submitted, and those who resisted lived in fear that they would be the next to vanish. At the edge of this storm lay Observation Outpost Vera 7, a vast station that hung in orbit over a dead moon. It was not a fortress, not a frontline base. Instead, it was a place where diplomats, generals, and representatives of dozens of alien civilizations gathered to watch, to calculate, and to whisper. From here, they could see the system that had been chosen for the next great clash. But this clash would be different. For the first time, humans were entering the war. The observers filled the galleries of the outpost. Vast chambers lined with transparent alloy allowed them to look out upon the void, where entire fleets maneuvered like pieces on a cosmic chessboard. Holographic maps filled the air, projecting every movement of ships, every flicker of energy, every shadow of battle to come. Species from across the galactic community gathered there. The scaled Dravari, whose long necks craned toward the displays. The luminous Kalari, their bodies of light pulsing softly as they communicated in colors. The cautious Vorthan, who preferred to record every detail for their endless archives. Each species had its own view, its own fears, but in this chamber, they all shared one expectation. The humans would not last. "They are too young," hissed a Dravari general, his scales rippling a dull gray of disdain. "Their fleets are untested. Their technology is crude. They enter this war not with wisdom, but with arrogance." A Kalari diplomat shimmered in response, her body glowing in slow waves. "They are spirited, yes. But spirit is not strategy. The Dominion will crush them." The Vorthan archivist tapped his recording device, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "It will be written that the species of Earth made their attempt and fell." Across the chamber, few disagreed. Then the human fleet arrived. Out of the cold dark of hyperspace, their ships appeared in flashes of light, emerging like hunters stepping into a vast arena. They were smaller than the Dominion's massive dreadnoughts, their designs angular and functional rather than elegant. Yet there was something in their movement that drew the eyes of every observer. The First Terran Expeditionary Fleet had come to fight. Their flagship, TNS Resolute, led the way. Its hull bore no ornament, no gilded mark of empire. It was simply a weapon forged for survival. Around it, cruisers, frigates, and carriers spread out, forming loose but deliberate lines. Human fighters, sleek, darting machines, poured from their bays, circling like restless predators waiting to be unleashed. The aliens on Vera 7 whispered among themselves. The humans were not afraid. There was no hesitation in their approach, no uncertainty in their movements. They entered the system as though they belonged here, and far across the void, waiting for them, the Dominion fleet stirred. The Dominion's warships were massive, each one a fortress in its own right. Their hulls glowed with crimson light, their weapons capable of tearing entire cities from orbit. They spread across the system in a wall of steel and fire, confident in their supremacy. To them, the humans were nothing more than another defiant species soon to be broken. In the gallery of Vera 7, the aliens could feel the tension rise. The first clash was moments away. Among the observers stood Ambassador Thaler of the Kalari, her luminous form dimmed in unease. She turned to the being beside her, a human liaison named Commander Eric Hale. Unlike the other humans, he was not in a warship but on the station, serving as a representative to the galactic community. Thaler's glow flickered in soft amber tones. "Your people, they know what they face. The Dominion does not fight fair battles. They bring overwhelming force. Why would your leaders commit to this?" Commander Hale's expression was calm, his eyes steady as he looked out at the unfolding scene. "Because someone has to, and because we've faced worse than this." The aliens around him tilted their heads in disbelief. Worse than the Dominion? Such a claim seemed absurd. But Hale did not elaborate. He simply watched, waiting. On the holodisplays, the fleets closed the distance. Distances in space were vast, but strategy was measured in minutes, not miles. Soon, the Dominion unleashed the first strike. A storm of plasma fire lanced across the void, a wall of energy that could reduce lesser fleets to ash. The Dominion's guns burned bright, their fury filling the darkness, and the humans did not retreat. Instead, the fleet broke apart. Observers gasped as they saw the Terran ships scatter, not in chaos but in deliberate maneuvers. Frigates darted forward at impossible speeds, slipping through gaps in the barrage. Cruisers twisted in tight arcs, presenting narrow profiles to incoming fire. Fighters swarmed in dense formations, weaving through explosions like birds in a storm. It was not the rigid formation of galactic doctrine. It was something else, something wild, unpredictable, alive. "They are charging?" one alien whispered in disbelief. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Samantha Drake stood tall. She was not decorated with ornate robes or heavy symbols of command. She wore the same uniform as her crew, simple and practical. Her voice cut through the battle like steel. "Bring us closer. Target their carriers first. Break their wings, then their claws." Her officers responded without hesitation. The ship surged forward, weapons blazing. Torpedoes streaked into the void, cutting through enemy screens. Railguns thundered, hurling slugs of metal with devastating precision. Around her, the human fleet moved as though it were one living organism, each ship acting not alone, but as part of a greater design. When one vessel took fire, others shifted to cover it. When an opening appeared, they struck as a pack. To the aliens watching, it was madness. To humans, it was instinct. The Dominion countered, their massive warships turning to bring heavier guns to bear. Beams of energy slashed across the void, tearing through space with unstoppable power. Several human ships were struck. One frigate, the TNS Pathfinder, took a direct hit and began to spiral, its engines aflame. But even as it died, the ship's crew made their choice. With no chance of survival, they aimed their vessel at the nearest Dominion cruiser. Engines flared one last time, and the two ships collided in a brilliant explosion. Gasps filled the gallery of Vera 7. Aliens who had seen countless battles stared in shock. For them, such an act was unthinkable. To waste a ship, to sacrifice lives so willingly, it was horror. But to the humans, it was resolve. Commander Hale stood quietly as the alien observers turned to him. His eyes never left the display. "That's what you don't understand," he said softly. "We don't break, not when it matters." Hours passed, though in battle they felt like moments stretched thin. The Dominion pressed its advantage, relying on its overwhelming numbers. But the humans refused to fight on the enemy's terms. They struck from shadows, used debris as cover, lured enemy ships into traps. Their fleet moved with the creativity of artists and the ruthlessness of predators. Every loss only seemed to sharpen their will. By the time the first day of battle ended, the Dominion had not won the swift victory it expected. Its forces were bloodied, its commanders unsettled, and the humans, though battered, still stood. In the galleries of Vera 7, silence hung heavy. The aliens who had expected defeat now found themselves staring at something they could not explain. The humans had entered battle, and the galaxy would never look at them the same way again. The system was burning with light. Ships moved like shadows against the stars, and every second brought new flashes of fire. The human fleet had entered the storm, and the storm was answering. On observation outpost Vera 7, the alien observers pressed closer to the glowing displays. The chamber was filled with tension. Voices rose and fell, some whispering in disbelief, others sharp with criticism, but no one looked away. They were watching something no one had expected, humans refusing to collapse under the first assault, opening fire. The Dominion launched wave after wave of plasma fire. Their ships carried weapons large enough to tear apart a mountain. Their beams cut across space with terrifying precision, ripping through anything caught in their path. Normally, a smaller fleet would scatter, panic, or surrender. But the humans did not. The Resolute led the fleet in an impossible charge. Instead of pulling back, human ships closed the distance. Frigates darted forward like arrows, slicing through the Dominion's barrage. Cruisers rolled and twisted, presenting narrow targets. Fighters streaked ahead in tight formations, their engines flaring bright against the dark. From the gallery, a Kalari diplomat pulsed in alarm, her glowing body flickering fast. "They are charging into fire!" This is madness. No one closes distance with the Dominion. No one. But Admiral Samantha Drake on the Resolute knew exactly what she was doing. "Target their carriers," she ordered. "Break their fighter wings. Cut their reach. Her officers moved instantly. Torpedoes screamed through the void. Railgun slugs ripped holes in enemy screens. Human fighters swept ahead, darting past enemy formations to hammer at the massive Dominion carriers. It was not careful, measured warfare. It was something raw, aggressive, and alive. Alien reactions. The aliens on Vera 7 struggled to understand. They were used to fleets moving in strict lines, obeying patterns perfected over centuries. The humans ignored those rules. They fought like hunters, circling, feinting, striking where it hurt most. General Zorak of the Dravari hissed, his scales clattering in agitation. This is chaos. They break formation again and again. They invite destruction. Beside him, the Vorthan archivist recorded with trembling hands. And yet, the destruction falls not only on them. Look. All eyes turned to the holo displays. A Dominion carrier, massive and bristling with weapons, had begun to burn. Human torpedoes had torn into its engines. Fighters swarmed its hull, striking again and again. And then, in a sudden burst, the great ship split apart. For a heartbeat, the gallery fell silent. The human Way Admiral Drake stood at the center of her bridge, her eyes cold but focused. Around her, alarms blared, crew members shouted, and reports poured in. But her voice was steady. Keep pressure on the left flank. Don't let them regroup. Push the advantage. Her ships obeyed. The Dominion countered with brutal strength. Their dreadnoughts unleashed firestorms that lit entire swaths of space. One human cruiser, the Ironheart, took a direct hit and split open. Dozens of escape pods jettisoned into the void. Yet instead of breaking morale, the destruction only drove the humans harder. Another frigate, the TNS Valor, crippled beyond repair, charged at a Dominion destroyer. Its engines roared, and in one final act it rammed the enemy vessel. The explosion shook the displays, leaving both ships in ruins. The aliens watching recoiled. To them it was horror. To the humans it was duty. Commander Eric Hale, still standing in the observation gallery, said quietly, "Every ship, every crew, they know the risk. But no one runs. Not while others still fight." Boarding actions. As the fleets clashed, something even more shocking occurred. Human Marines launched boarding pods, small craft, little more than armored shells with engines, streaked across the battlefield and slammed into Dominion hulls. Explosives tore open breaches and human soldiers flooded inside. The observers gasped aloud. Boarding actions were considered reckless, suicidal even. Most species avoided them entirely, but the humans were different. They entered enemy ships with ferocity, using close combat where the Dominion expected none. Reports came in, Dominion cruisers falling silent, their crews overwhelmed from within. Entire sections of their fleet lost not to firepower but to human determination. Ambassador Thaler of the Kalari dimmed her glow in disbelief. They throw themselves into the jaws of the beast and tear it apart from the inside. Who does this? Commander Hale answered with a faint smile. Humans do. The Dominion hesitates. For the first time, the Dominion showed hesitation. Their ships, once so confident, began to slow their advance. They pulled back in small movements, regrouping, adjusting. The humans had not broken. Instead, they had torn open the Dominion's wings and scarred their pride. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Drake seized the moment, pressed the advantage. Focus fire on their lead dreadnought. Make them bleed. A wall of human firepower converged. Torpedoes, railguns, and plasma beams hammered the massive vessel. Shields flared, cracked, and failed. Explosions rippled across its hull until at last the dreadnought split apart in a blinding burst of flame. The Dominion, for the first time in the war, retreated a step. Shock and awe in the galleries of Vera 7 silence reigned. The aliens could not believe what they had seen. The humans had not won the battle, not yet, but they had done the impossible. The Vorthan archivist muttered aloud, half to himself, "This is not strategy as we know it. It is instinct. They fight as though battle is not learned, but lived." The Dravari general spat in frustration. "They are reckless animals. They will burn themselves out. They cannot sustain this." But no one was so sure anymore. The long night, the battle raged on for hours. Both fleets bled heavily. Dominion warships burned. Human vessels drifted in ruin and wreckage littered the void. Yet still the humans fought. Every time the Dominion expected them to falter, they surged back with new fury. Every time the line seemed ready to collapse, ships held, battered but unbroken. In one corner of the field, a human destroyer, TNS Defiance, lost half its weapons and most of its engines. Still, its crew refused to abandon it. They kept firing, hammering a Dominion cruiser until both ships went down together. In another sector, human fighters, outnumbered 2-1, lured Dominion interceptors into a debris field, where they wove through wreckage with impossible precision. The Dominion pilots, unable to match their speed, were shredded. The observers watched with wide eyes. Horror and awe blended into one. The end of the first clash at last, the Dominion began to withdraw. Not a full retreat, but a pause. Their commanders had expected an easy slaughter. Instead, they had found a foe that refused to die quietly. The human fleet, though battered and reduced, still held its ground. Their ships formed a ragged line, weapons glowing, engines flickering. They did not chase the Dominion. They simply stood, daring them to return. In the gallery, Ambassador Thalor's glow steadied. They were not broken. Commander Hale nodded once, his voice low. No, they never are. Aftermath, the system grew quiet. Wreckage drifted like ghosts through the void, flames flickering against the darkness. Rescue craft moved among the debris, pulling survivors from shattered hulls. On the Resolute, Admiral Drake stood with her crew. Her uniform was torn, her face lined with fatigue, but her eyes still burned. "We held," she said simply, "and we will hold again." Her words carried across the fleet, across the observation outpost, and soon, across the galaxy. The humans had entered battle, and the galaxy had seen the first proof that they were unlike any species before them. The system was quiet only for a moment. After the first clash, both fleets pulled back to breathe. Wreckage floated everywhere, twisted metal glowing with dying fire. Broken ships spun slowly in the void, their remains silent reminders of the storm that had just passed. But silence never lasted long in war. The Dominion was regrouping, and the humans, though bloodied, were preparing to strike again. The watching eyes on observation outpost Vera 7, the aliens gathered close around the holodisplays. Every face, every glowing form, every scaled head was fixed on the battlefield. No one had expected the humans to survive the first clash. Fewer still had expected them to fight back so fiercely. Ambassador Thaler of the Kalari glowed faintly, her light dimmed in thought. General Zorak of the Dravari hissed with unease, though he tried to hide it. The Vorthan archivist wrote quickly, recording every detail for history. But none of them could deny what they had seen. The humans had not fought like any species before. They had fought like predators. The Dominion's response. The Dominion fleet did not retreat far. Their commanders were not used to hesitation. But the sting of human resistance had left a mark, and now they gathered with greater caution. Dreadnoughts formed the core of their new line. Cruisers and destroyers spread like wings around them. Thousands of fighters swarmed, ready to strike. The Dominion meant to show the humans that survival in the first clash had been nothing but chance. On the Resolute, Admiral Samantha Drake studied the enemy formation. Her eyes were hard, her voice calm. "They've tightened their ranks," she said. "They think strength in numbers will break us." Her second-in-command, Captain Lee, frowned at the glowing tactical map. "They outnumber us 3-1. By every standard, they should crush us." Admiral Drake gave a thin smile. "Then we won't fight by their standards." The charge of the Defiant. When the Dominion advanced again, it was like a wall of steel moving forward. Their guns lit up the void, and their fighters screamed ahead in clouds of fire. The human fleet did not wait. They surged to meet them. At the tip of the charge was the destroyer TNS Defiant. Already battered, its hull scarred and engines weak, it should have pulled back. Instead, it pushed forward, leading the line. On the Dominion side, commanders sneered. To them, the move looked desperate, pathetic even. A single wounded ship could not stop their wall, but the humans had other plans. As Dominion guns opened fire, the Defiant twisted through the barrage, shields sparking, armor breaking. It raced forward straight at a Dominion cruiser. The two ships collided in a massive explosion that shook the battlefield. The gallery on Vera 7 gasped. "That ship, it sacrificed itself," whispered Thaler. Commander Eric Hale, standing among them, did not flinch. His voice was steady. The crew chose their end. Better to take an enemy with them than die quietly. The aliens recoiled in horror. To them, such loss was unimaginable. To humans, it was resolve. The border's fury, the battle only grew stranger. As fleets clashed, human marines once again launched boarding pods. The small craft streaked across the battlefield, slamming into Dominion hulls with brute force. Explosions tore breaches, and human soldiers stormed inside. Reports filled the displays. Dominion crews overwhelmed, command decks seized, weapon systems turned against their own fleet. The aliens stared in disbelief. Boarding actions were madness. No species risked soldiers in close quarters when fleets could simply fire from a distance. Yet the humans seemed to thrive in the chaos. On one Dominion ship, resistance held strong. The crew fought desperately to repel the humans. But then a single human marine squad locked themselves in the reactor chamber. Instead of retreating, they detonated explosives, taking the entire warship down with them. The gallery erupted in horrified whispers. They destroyed themselves? The Vorthan archivist stammered, his 4 eyes wide. Commander Hale's voice was quiet. If it saves their fleet, yes, always. The endless tenacity for every ship the humans lost. They struck back with twice the fury. A human frigate, engines crippled, became a stationary gun platform, firing until it was nothing but drifting wreckage. A damaged carrier continued to launch fighters even as its hangar decks burned. Pilots with failing ships rammed Dominion interceptors rather than eject. The aliens had thought they understood battle. They had studied strategy for centuries, written entire libraries on war. But nothing in their records explained this. Nothing explained humans. Admiral Drake's voice cut through the chaos on the comms. Hold your ground, adapt. Every loss is a lesson. Use it. Her officers obeyed. And somehow, against every prediction, the human line held. The Dominion hesitates. Again. Hours passed. The Dominion should have won easily. They still outnumbered the humans. Their ships were larger, their weapons stronger. But they hesitated. Every advance was answered with brutal resistance. Every weakness the humans showed became a trap. The Dominion commanders, for the first time in generations, began to doubt. The aliens on Vera 7 saw it. They saw the hesitation ripple through the Dominion fleet. And they saw something else, something more terrifying. The humans fought harder the longer the battle lasted. The songs of defiance. In the middle of the chaos, a strange report reached the gallery. Audio intercepts carried across the void captured human voices. Crews aboard battered ships were singing. Even as alarms screamed, even as hulls cracked and oxygen leaked, human voices rose together. Songs of Earth. Old words carried on melodies that spoke of struggle, hope, and unyielding spirit. The aliens listening froze. To them it was madness. To sing in battle? To celebrate while facing death? It was beyond reason, but to the humans it was strength. Why do they sing? Taylor whispered. Hale's answer was simple. Because fear does not rule them. Because even at the edge of death they refuse to bow. The horror and the awe of the gallery grew quiet as the realization spread. The aliens had come expecting a tragedy. Expecting to record the end of a young species that had dared to stand against giants. Instead, they were witnessing something that made their hearts race and their minds recoil. The humans did not fight like prey. They did not fight like civilized strategists. They fought like something older, something wilder. They fought like survivors of a world that had tested them with storms, beasts, and endless struggle. And they fought with joy. The aliens felt horror at the sacrifices, at the reckless courage, at the way humans seemed to embrace pain as part of victory. But alongside the horror was awe, because the humans were not losing. The turning blow at. The height of the clash, Admiral Drake seized the moment. Focus fire on their command ship. Break their head and the body will fall. The human fleet, battered but unbroken, shifted together. Their weapons blazed as one. Torpedoes streaked forward. Railguns thundered. Fighters swarmed like wolves. The Dominion command ship, massive and towering, staggered under the assault. Shields flared, failed, and collapsed. Flames tore through its decks until finally, in one massive burst, it exploded. The shock rippled across the Dominion fleet. Ships faltered. Formations broke. And for the second time, the unthinkable happened. The Dominion began to retreat. The galaxy watches on Vera 7. Silence filled the gallery once more. The aliens did not cheer. They did not clap or shout. They simply stared at the displays, unable to believe what their eyes showed. The humans, outnumbered, outgunned, untested, had faced the galaxy's greatest conquerors. And the conquerors had stepped back. Ambassador Thalor's glow brightened faintly. They fight as though death is no barrier. The Vorthan archivist spoke softly. This must be recorded. Future generations will not believe it without proof. General Zorak of the Dravari hissed, scales clattering. They are not soldiers. They are monsters. To fight like that, to throw away life so willingly, it is not natural. Commander Hale's eyes were steady. You call it horror. We call it survival. The dawn of fear, the Dominion was not destroyed. Their fleets remained vast, their empire strong. But the battle had shaken them. For the first time in centuries, their commanders doubted, and across the galaxy whispers began. Whispers of Earth, of humanity, of the predators who had stood where others had fallen. The aliens on Vera 7 looked at one another, silent in their thoughts. Some saw madness, some saw hope. All saw change, because humanity had entered the war, and nothing would ever be the same again. The void was filled with drifting wreckage. Broken ships spun slowly, their hulls glowing faintly from dying flames. Both sides had lost much. Yet the humans still stood. The Dominion, a power that had crushed countless civilizations, had been forced back twice. It should have been impossible. But impossibility seemed to follow humanity wherever they went. The gathering of shadows, on observation outpost Vera 7, the alien gallery was silent. The Kalari dimmed their glow in awe. The Dravari shifted uneasily, and the Vorthan wrote without pause, desperate to capture every detail. Ambassador Thalor of the Kalari finally broke the silence. This was not chance. This was not luck. They are changing the battle. General Zorak of the Dravari hissed sharply. Do not mistake desperation for strategy. They throw themselves into fire like fools. Sooner or later, they will burn. Commander Eric Hale stood quietly among them. His human eyes were steady as he looked out at the displays. We don't burn as easily as you think. The Dominion strikes again. The Dominion was not finished. Their commanders were furious, their pride wounded. Across the system, reinforcements arrived, fresh ships, heavier dreadnoughts, carriers filled with fighters. The new fleet stretched across the stars, an iron wall prepared to sweep the humans away once and for all. On the Resolute, Admiral Samantha Drake studied the tactical display. Her fleet was battered, her numbers few. Entire squadrons had been lost. Yet her voice was calm, her presence unshaken. They think numbers alone will break us, she said. But they don't understand who we are. Captain Lee frowned. We're outnumbered 5-1 now. By every measure, Admiral, this should be our last stand. Drake gave a thin smile. Then let's make it one they'll never forget. The human resilience. The battle began again. The Dominion surged forward in overwhelming force. Their dreadnoughts unleashed beams that could shatter mountains. Fighters swarmed in endless clouds. The human fleet did not retreat. Instead, they met the storm head-on. Ships already damaged refused to fall back. Crews worked furiously in smoke-filled corridors, repairing weapons with their bare hands, patching hulls with anything they could find. Some ships fought with only half their systems working, yet still they pressed on. On one cruiser, the TNS Horizon, engineers kept power flowing by hand-cranking damaged systems, refusing to let the ship go silent. On another, the TNS Liberty, the captain broadcast his voice fleet-wide. We stand. As long as one ship remains, we stand. The message spread across comms, and the fleet roared back in defiance. The fear of the Dominion. The Dominion expected the humans to falter. But the longer the fight dragged on, the stronger the humans seemed to grow. Every loss only hardened their resolve. Every wound only deepened their fury. Dominion crews began to hesitate. Pilots flinched when human fighters dove at them headlong. Captains wavered when damaged human ships turned back to fight instead of fleeing. For the first time in living memory, the Dominion felt fear. The Pack Tactics Admiral Drake unleashed a new strategy. She called it the Pack. Instead of standing in defensive lines, human ships split into small groups. Each group circled an enemy target, striking from all sides, refusing to give it room to breathe. Dominion dreadnoughts, used to crushing foes with sheer size, found themselves harassed from every angle. Frigates darted in and out, launching torpedoes. Cruisers hammered from a distance. Fighters swarmed like angry hornets. One Dominion battleship, surrounded by a dozen smaller human vessels, fell apart under the relentless pack assault. Another tried to retreat, but human ships cut it off and tore it down piece by piece. In the gallery, the aliens watched in astonishment. General Zorak growled low. This is not war. This is hunting. Commander Hale nodded once. Exactly. The songs continue across the human fleet, voices rose again. Crews sang through the chaos, songs of Earth carried over comms. Old sea shanties, battle hymns, folk tunes, words of endurance, of humor, of defiance. The aliens listening felt chills. To them it was eerie, unsettling. To sing while dying, to laugh while the void swallowed ships. But to the humans it was strength. Ambassador Thaler whispered softly. They sound as though they are alive in the middle of death. Commander Hale answered, because for us to fight like this is to live. Turning the tide, the battle raged for hours. Both sides lost heavily. Wreckage filled the system like a graveyard, but the humans refused to give ground. Admiral Drake saw her chance. A gap had opened in the Dominion's formation. Concentrate fire there, she ordered. Break their spine. The human fleet surged. Every weapon fired, every ship pushed forward. The gap widened. Dominion ships struggled to regroup, but the humans pressed harder. Then came the decisive moment. A Dominion super dreadnought, massive and towering, became isolated. Its escorts were destroyed. Its weapons burned hot but alone. Admiral Drake gave the command. All ships, pack formation. Bring it down. The humans swarmed. Frigates darted in, torpedoes striking weak points. Cruisers pounded its shields. Fighters cut across its hull in endless waves. The super dreadnought tried to fight, but the humans clung to it like wolves to a wounded beast. Piece by piece its armor cracked. Piece by piece its power failed. And then, with a thunderous explosion, it fell. The shock rippled through the Dominion fleet. Their strongest ship destroyed, their formation broken, their pride shattered. The humans had turned the tide. The horror of the observers. On Vera 7, the aliens could hardly breathe. They had seen war before, but never like this. The humans were not only surviving, they were winning. But the way they fought filled the observers with both fear and awe. They saw humans ramming ships, sacrificing themselves, laughing as they died. They saw crews refusing to abandon vessels even when all hope was gone. They saw a species that did not measure victory in numbers, but in will. The Vorthan archivist muttered, "This is not in the archives. No record of such behavior exists. They fight as though loss is nothing." Ambassador Thaler glowed faintly. "It is not nothing. It is everything." They burn themselves to keep the flame alive, General Zorak hissed, scales bristling. If they fight like this for survival, what would they do for conquest? None dared answer. The retreat of the Dominion unthinkably pulled back. Their commanders signaled retreat, their ships breaking formation and fleeing into the void. The humans, bloodied but unbroken, did not chase. Their ships hung in ragged lines, weapons still glowing, daring the enemy to return. The battle was over. The impossible had happened. Aftermath silence returned to the system. Rescue ships darted among the wreckage, pulling survivors from broken hulls. Fires burned dimly against the stars. On the Resolute, Admiral Drake stood with her crew. Her face was pale, her uniform torn, but her eyes still burned with fire. "We held," she said quietly, "and we'll hold again. However many times it takes." Her crew answered with a cheer, weary but strong. The message spread across the fleet, across the galaxy, and soon across every world that had watched. The galaxy changes in the gallery of Vera 7, the aliens sat in silence. They had come expecting to watch the death of a young species. Instead, they had seen the rise of something terrifying and magnificent. Ambassador Thaler spoke softly, her glow steady. "The Dominion has met its match." The Vorthan archivist closed his recorder. "No one will ever fight the same again. The humans have changed everything." General Zorak's voice was a whisper now, perhaps too much. Commander Hale, the only human in the gallery, stood tall. His eyes were calm, his voice firm. "You asked who we are," he said. "Now you've seen. We are humanity. We don't run. We don't bow. When the tide rises against us, we turn it." The galaxy had seen enough to know the truth. Humanity had entered the war not as prey, not as a weak new species, but as something else entirely. Predators, survivors, fighters, and the tide of the galaxy was beginning to shift. The battlefield was quiet now. The fires had faded, leaving only drifting wreckage and the long shadows of ruined ships. The humans had survived. Against all odds, they had forced the mighty Dominion to retreat, but survival was only the beginning. The galaxy had been watching, and the galaxy would not forget. The silence after war in orbit above the scarred system, human rescue ships worked without pause. They pulled survivors from shattered hulls, patched holes, and extinguished fires. Medical teams rushed from one wounded crew member to another, refusing to stop until everyone who could be saved was safe. On the Resolute, Admiral Samantha Drake stood before a cracked viewport, staring out at the graveyard of ships. Her uniform was torn, her voice hoarse, but her presence remained strong. "They came to destroy us," she said quietly, "and instead they ran. Remember this day, not because we lived, but because we proved we belong." Her officers nodded, their faces weary but proud. The observers speak far away. On Observation Outpost Vera 7, the alien gallery remained in stunned silence. They had seen the Dominion lose skirmishes before, but never like this. Never to a species so young, so reckless, and so unyielding. Ambassador Thaler, her glow dim and thoughtful, finally spoke. "I thought humanity would be extinguished quickly. Now I see, they are a fire that spreads." General Zorak of the Dravari shifted uneasily, his scaled hands gripping the railing. "I watched them sing while they died. I watched them laugh while their ships burned. It was not natural." The Vorthan archivist adjusted his recorder. "Not natural, no, but unforgettable. This record will change history. The humans have shown the galaxy something new, something terrifying." And in the center of the gallery stood Commander Eric Hale, the single human among them. His face carried no smile, no boast, only calm certainty. "You came here to witness our end," he said softly. "Instead, you witnessed our beginning." The spread of rumors, word of the battle, spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Every station, every world, every fleet heard the reports. The Dominion, who had crushed entire empires with ease, had been forced to retreat from a fleet of humans who should not have stood a chance. Rumors grew quickly. Some said humans could not feel fear. Others claimed they drank fire to give themselves courage. A few whispered that they were not mortal at all. But spirits of war in flesh, for the first time, the galaxy feared a species not because of their numbers or their weapons, but because of their will. The council debate, the Galactic Council gathered in emergency session. Representatives of dozens of species filled the chamber, their voices loud, their arguments endless. "The humans are dangerous," cried one elder of the Cernathi. "If they fight like this now, what will they become in a century? They must be contained?" "No," answered Ambassador Thalor, glowing steadily. "They are dangerous, yes, but they are also hope. Did you not see? They stood against the Dominion when we could not." General Zorak slammed his clawed hand against the table. "Hope, they are predators. They are a storm that cannot be controlled. If they rise too far, the galaxy itself will burn." The chamber erupted in voices. Fear, admiration, jealousy, respect, all fought for dominance. And quietly in the back, the Vorthan archivist whispered to himself as he wrote, "This is the moment the galaxy changes. This is the moment the humans claim their place." The return to Earth, back on Earth, news of the battle reached billions. Families wept for the lost, but their sorrow was mixed with pride. Children looked up at the stars with new wonder. And across the world a new word spread: victory. For centuries, humans had only dreamed of joining the stars. Now they had not only joined, they had reshaped the field of war itself. In cities, people gathered in streets, lighting lanterns for the fallen. In small towns, bells rang. And in every corner of Earth, the message was the same. Humanity had faced the impossible and endured. The Dominion plots. The Dominion, however, was far from finished. In their dark halls, their warlords seethed with humiliation. Never before had they been forced to retreat by such a small enemy. "This cannot stand," growled one Dominion overlord. "They are not even a true power. They are nothing but a primitive world, and yet they cut down our ships?" Another overlord spoke coldly. "Then we will return, stronger. We will not just crush them, we will erase them." But deep within the Dominion fleet, whispers spread. Ordinary soldiers had seen the humans up close. They had faced their relentless attacks, their unyielding courage. And many Dominion warriors now carried something new inside them: fear. The human spirit Admiral Drake stood before her surviving fleet. Ships battered, crews exhausted, supplies running low. Yet her people still stood tall. "We have shown the galaxy who we are," she told them. "We are not prey. We are not fragile. We are not to be ignored. The Dominion will return. Others may come, but we will never bow. We will fight and we will endure. The fleet roared in answer. Their voices carried across comms, strong and fierce. It was not just the sound of soldiers, it was the sound of a people declaring themselves to the stars. The reputation forged across the galaxy, the humans gained a new name. Not Deathworlders, not primitives, not weak newcomers. They became known as the Relentless. The name spread in whispers and in records, in fear and in respect. To some it was a warning, to others it was a promise. Because where other species bent, the humans stood. Where others broke, the humans endured. Where others fled, the humans fought. The observer's reflection on Vera 7, the alien observers prepared to leave. Their time watching humanity was over, but the memory would never fade. Ambassador Thalor glowed warmly. I came fearing their weakness. I leave fearing their strength. But I would rather stand with them than against them. The Vorthan archivist bowed his head. History has turned a page. The galaxy is no longer the same. General Zorak's voice was low, almost a growl. Mark my words. They will rise higher than any of us imagine. And when they do, the galaxy will tremble. Commander Hale, standing beside them, simply said, "We're not here to rule. We're here to survive. But if survival means fighting, then the galaxy will see more battles like this." The final message, Admiral Drake sent one last message across human space and into the wider galaxy. We are humanity. We are small, but we endure. We are few, but we fight. We are scarred, but we rise again. If the Dominion comes, we will stand. If any enemy comes, we will stand. Because we are not afraid. The message echoed far beyond human space. On countless worlds, beings who had given up hope lifted their heads again. And in the dark halls of the Dominion, warlords clenched their fists in rage. A new dawn as the sun rose over Earth, shining on oceans and cities. Humanity looked to the stars. They were no longer just dreamers. No longer just wanderers. They were warriors, survivors. A force the galaxy could not ignore. The humans had entered battle. The galaxy had watched in horror. And now the galaxy would never be the same.